Hey guys, so we've been talking a lot about spinning these past couple of weeks. And you know what? What if you're interested in spinning, but you don't even know where to start? I mean, we talked a lot about fiber, we talk about wool, but what about the tool that you need in order to spin yarn? So today I'm going to take you through my little box of spindles here, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started with spinning yarn. Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about something to do with the fiber arts, whether it's knitting or spinning or weaving or dyeing. We've been talking a lot about spinning because right now in the School of SweetGeorgia, we are doing a spinning study group. And so that's really about helping people improve their spinning techniques, really learning about the fine things that affect the yarn that you create and how to do a better job making that yarn. But what if you don't know how to spin yarn? What if you're curious? What if you're interested in learning how to start, but you don't even know where to begin? And so I think one of the least expensive ways, one of the lowest barrier ways to enter into this world of spinning is through a spindle. And so I'm going to show you my little collection here. This is not all of them, but my little collection of spindles to give you an idea of what to look for, what to avoid, and what might be just fun to play with. So at the very beginning, when I started to learn how to spin, I was very intrigued by the idea of spinning with fiber, creating your own yarn, and I didn't really know how to get into it. And so what I did was I went to the store where they had some wool, where they sold wool fiber, where they sold spinning wheels, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do a wheel yet because I don't really know what I'm doing. And so what I went and I got something that was called a student spindle. So I got this spindle. And this is, as you can see, it's kind of a big spindle. So spindles have different formats, different shapes, lots of different sizes. This one happens to be one that's called a bottom-whorl spindle. So that's, you know, the whorl here, this big disc here, this is what gives it the weight that allows this spindle to continue turning. So this whorl here, located near the bottom, so it's a bottom-whorl spindle. You can see up here, this is a hook for hanging the yarn that you are creating. So when I first started spinning, I bought a bag of fiber and I bought this spindle. And I was standing in my living room trying to figure out how to make this spindle work. Now, one of the things that I didn't know about was that there were all these different spindles in different shapes and sizes and weights. This spindle is about 92 grams. This is actually like 3 ounces. So this is quite a heavy spindle. And so what I found what was happening is that I was trying to make yarn, and as I was trying to make yarn, it might have been thick, it might have been thin, it might have been not twisted enough, but for whatever reason, because that weight of this spindle was so heavy, it just kept dropping and breaking away from the fiber that I was holding in my hand, and the spindle kept dropping on the floor, and it was super frustrating, and I didn't understand why it wasn't working. I would put like a little bit of twist into it, and then I would let it draft out a little bit, and then the spindle would be on the floor. So I was extremely frustrated with my very first experiences with learning how to spin on a spindle, but I was still addicted to the idea of making yarn. So I sort of powered through, I tried to make this work, but then within a week I went back to the same wool store and I bought a spinning wheel, and that changed things for me significantly. I could focus on the drafting, my feet were just doing their own thing, and I just very quickly dove into spinning with a spinning wheel. But I don't think that your experience has to be like mine. I don't think you need to run out to buy a wheel in order to spin beautiful yarn. So it was only a couple of years later that I attended a spinning retreat. It was hosted by Interweave, and it's called SOAR. It's the Spin-Off Autumn Retreat. And it was an amazing, amazing event because you just go to this event and it's a week-long event where the whole place is full of spinners. And what I saw was that there were spinners walking down the hall, spinning on drop spindles as they were walking and talking and making yarn. And I just thought it was the most magical thing. It was quite impressive. And I had never been able to have that kind of success with a spindle. And so I went back and I really tried to look at, how could I improve my spindle spinning? How could I get into this, because spindle spinning is much more portable than wheel spinning, obviously. The next spindle that I bought is this one. I bought this at one of the local fiber festivals here in the Vancouver Lower Mainland. And so this is a beautiful spindle. I can't even remember what kind of wood this is, but it's one of those beautiful exotic hardwoods. And so this spindle spun beautifully for me. I figured out how to spin with a drop spindle. And so you can see this is a Top-Whorl spindle. So the hook is up here, the whorl is closer to the top, and then this is where you would load up all of your yarn after you spin it. And so this spindle worked beautifully for me. And when I go to weigh it, it's about 40 grams, just over 1 ounce. And so that's this one. With a drop spindle, in order to make yarn, the easiest way to put this spindle into motion is to kind of roll it up your leg. So rolling it up the side of your leg, and then that helps to put the spindle into motion and help to add twist to your yarn that's being formed right there. Now this one is a beautiful spindle with this beautiful wood, but you don't have to get anything this fancy. This is about 40 grams. But then this one, this is a spindle that is also kind of like a student spindle. This one was made by Louette, and you know, it's got this octagon sort of shape to the whorl, so that way when you put it down on the table, it's not going to roll around anywhere, it's not going to go anywhere. So there's this one. This is also about 40 grams. And then this one is actually made locally by Eric Stewart from Crafty Jacks. So if you know Katrina from Crafty Jacks, who does hand-dyed fiber, her husband also makes spinning tools. And so this one is a drop spindle that I got from Eric. And so you can see, again, Top-Whorl spindle, there's the hook, this is the shaft where you would wind on all of your yarn. And this one I weighed, it was about 30 grams, about 27, 28 grams. These are all very, very simple drop spindles that you can use. The Top-Whorl drop spindles, about 1 ounce, maybe a little bit more than 1 ounce. These are a perfect starting place for learning how to spin. And they don't have to be very, very expensive. I mean, these spindles could be anywhere from about 20 bucks up to $100, depending on what kind of wood, what kind of decoration is in them, how fancy they are, all sorts of things. But these kinds of drop spindles are great for learning how to spin. Once I got the hang of spinning with the drop spindle, I became enamored with Turkish spindles. These things are beautiful. So again, at those local fiber festivals, there was another booth who was selling Turkish spindles, and they were just going like hotcakes. So I think that there was a little bit of a frenzy around, oh my gosh, these Turkish spindles, they're selling out so quickly. I must get my hands on one. And so I got a tiny little Turkish spindle by Jenkins, and yeah, they're tiny. They're tiny. I don't have one here. They're in another bag that I left at home, but I'll have a photo here for you. But these tiny little spindles are adorable. They're light. They come in different sizes, so you can get heavier ones if you like, but they're adorable and really compact and easy to spin with. So to give you an idea of what a Turkish spindle is, beyond my actual photograph, this is a Turkish spindle that was also designed by Eric Stewart at Crafty Jacks. And so you can see it's 3 different pieces. So one is the shaft, and the shaft comes out completely. And then you have 2 pieces here. So you'll have these 2 banana-shaped pieces, and they fit together like so, and then you pop the shaft through, and then they are assembled like this. Now, all of the Turkish spindles come in this format, different shapes, different weights, different kinds of wood, all sorts of things. You could have an exotic wood for the arms here, and then a different kind of wood for the shaft here. So many different options. You can find a lot of these on Etsy as well. They're beautiful and fun. One of the other cool things about a Turkish spindle is that once you finish spinning with it, you can pull the shaft out and pull the arms out, and then what you're left with is basically a ball of yarn, a ball of singles that you can just ply. So you can see this is just the tiny little bit of yarn that I just pulled off of that Turkish spindle, but it's already, you can unravel this and you can just ply directly from this ball. So that's a really fun thing to do, is to be able to spin enough yarn so that way you have a ball's worth of yarn on your Turkish spindle, and then be able to pull that off and then ply that with another ball. Super, super fun. So again, this is kind of like almost like a bottom whorl in effect, because this is the part that gives the weight that allows the spindle to continue turning. And instead of a hook, there's like a little notch here where you do a half hitch to hold onto your yarn. And so that's that's that. So I have a couple of other Turkish spindles here in my kit, and these are just two of a few that I have. And these are made by Turtle Made. And so these are 3D printed spindles. Very, very interesting. So you can see the arms here, I got these glossy candy apple red sort of color. And on the bottom here, you can see it says Turtle Made. You can kind of see Turtle Made. So I got a sparkly red shaft to go with this. With a Turkish spindle, you're going to flick the top. So with your two fingers and your thumb, you flick, and then that is what is putting twist into your yarn. So working with a Turkish spindle is really just the same as working with a drop spindle. There's just a couple of other things that you have to remember with a Turkish spindle when you're winding the yarn onto the spindle. And so there's a little bit of a trick where you wind over two arms, under one arm, over two arms, under one arm in order to sort of wrap your yarn around here. And you can look at Instagram to see beautiful, beautiful Turkish spindles and how people wind their yarn onto the spindles. They just produce the most beautiful, relaxing patterns to look at. They're just really, really gorgeous. So these are fun to play with. Now, one of the spinning instructors from the School of SweetGeorgia, Debbie Held, she's just recently written a review of these Turtle Made spindles. So I'll send you a link in the show notes below, and maybe on the screen somewhere here, I'll put a link where you can go and read about her review of these spindles. This is also a very easy, very accessible way to get into spinning. So finally, I have a collection of supported spindles. And these things look like they would be really scary, and they look like they're very difficult to use, but in fact they're very, very simple. In order to work with a supported spindle, you need to have a bowl or something for the spindle to rest in, okay? And then this is a supported spindle. Beautiful, beautiful supported spindle. I bought this because it looks like a giant calligraphy brush. Like, just, it feels amazing, and it's very nice and heavy and dense and solid at the bottom, which helps it turn and keep it in motion. So you can see here, my bowl is right here in front of me, and the tip of your supported spindle sits inside the bowl, and then you can just give it a flick. And that flick helps add twist to the yarn that you're working on, okay? And then you wind it on to the supported spindle, and then you can draft out a little bit more yarn. So this supported spindle seems quite fancy. It's beautiful. It's got beautiful woods that have all been blended together and integrated. And so there are simpler, much simpler supported spindles. So there are some that I purchased here that were just one kind of wood. And they're much finer, easy to flick. You just flick it in between your fingers here. This is another one. So again, they all just work with a flick. This is one with a whole bunch of yarn on it already, but yeah, you just basically hold with your two fingers and your thumb, and you flick it here, and that's what's adding the twist to your fiber. Now, since we've been doing this spinning study group for the School of SweetGeorgia, we have been doing spinning sessions at the studio here for our team, for our staff here. And so everybody gets together on Friday around lunchtime, and they bring all their wheels around, and they've been spinning together. And so a couple of the people on our team have just learned to spin pretty much 2 weeks ago. And so there's been a couple of things that have been sticking in my mind about what would make it easier for people to learn how to spin for the very first time. And one of the things I wanted to mention is about your fiber. When you're looking at the fiber, we're working with, in a lot of cases, this kind of hand-painted wool top, commercial wool top. And so if you just, I'll break off a chunk here. You don't want to just start spinning straight from this chunk like so. It's a little bit going to be a little bit compacted. You want to breathe some air into this. And so one of the first things that I do when I teach spinning is I encourage everybody to sit there and learn how to draft their fiber, splitting up their fiber and drafting their fiber. And that really helps to add air to the fiber that you're working with. So in this case, I might take this little chunk of fiber and I might split it up a little bit, split it into a couple chunks, and then with this chunk, maybe go through and pre-draft it. So pre-drafting helps to reintroduce air into the fiber. It helps to separate it all so that it becomes nice and light and fluffy, so that way when you go to actually attempt to spin this with the drop spindle or whatever, that this is already going to be easier to draft. Okay, so you're not going to fight with your fiber as you're also trying to maintain this twist and maintain the motion of your spindle. So those are just some of the thoughts that I have about starting to spin, learning to spin from scratch. We actually have an entire course on the school called Spinning from Scratch, and that's one where I teach the class that I used to teach in person to people. When people would come and learn to spin for the first time, we would all sit down together and I would teach people how to treadle the wheel, how to draft fiber, how to pre-draft the fiber, how to prepare it for spinning, and then how to add twist, all of those kinds of things, how to spin two singles, how to apply them together. I have this class that I made called Spinning from Scratch, and that's what that is all about, just learning to spin from the very, very beginning. Now, if you don't have a wheel and you're interested in learning how to spin, we have some other options that we've made available in the School of SweetGeorgia, and one of them is a class called Spinning with Suspended Spindles. So like this is a suspended spindle, drop spindle is a suspended spindle, a Turkish spindle is also a suspended spindle, and so these classes are being taught by Diana Twist. She is a local spinning instructor as well, does a ton of spindle spinning. And then we also have another class called Spinning with Supported Spindles, which is to use something like this and to learn how to spin with that. So we do have a lot of resources for people who are just at the very beginning of learning how to spin. And once you're able to spin that continuous thread, you're able to get into the rhythm of all of that, then there's so many other things to explore. That's when exploring different sheep breeds becomes possible, exploring different ways of managing color, exploring different ways of preparing fiber ahead of time, exploring different ways of drafting the fiber. And so just this past week, we launched a new class, which is called Spinning Intentional Color. And this is the one that I teach, that I've been teaching for quite a number of years now. So that class is all about how to manage color that comes in a hand-painted format like this. What do you do with it? How many times do you strip it? Do you blend it together? Do you keep the colors separate? What do you do with it? And so that class, Spinning Intentional Color, is also now available on the School of SweetGeorgia. So I feel like we very much have, from beginning to end, content for spinners at all different levels. If you are just starting out, there's something for you. If you've been spinning for many, many years, there's also something for you there. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me if you are curious about learning how to spin, if you've never spun before and you're interested in learning how to do it, or if you have been spinning for a while, what advice do you have for brand new spinners? Somebody who's never touched a spindle before, never touched fiber before. What kind of advice or suggestions can you give to help someone on their way? So that is basically it for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching this, and thanks for talking about spindles and yarn and wool and all these wonderful things with me. If you like this episode, please do hit the like button, and if you would like to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. And we come here every Friday to talk about something to do with the fiber arts. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.